30 years ago.
Like that. Well, not 30 years, but definitely in the 40s.
Yeah, the 30s.
We don't want to spend too much time.
Is this meant to be
Yeah, right there.
behind your back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you on the ICA last year? Yeah, I remember you. Yeah, yeah. CGI, right? Remember that? Yeah. Yeah. Recognise you from there. Yeah.
Good memory.
So do we want to start now? We're a little bit early, are we? Yeah, we're okay? Yeah. All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to start a little earlier today than, it's not quite 1:30 yet, but we've got our whole panelists here and everybody's ready to go. So my name is Todd Lewis. I'm a grain grower and an oilseed producer in Western Canada, and I'm also Vice President of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. I'd like to thank our partners here at ICA for having this space here and allowing us to use it this afternoon, and with all the audio and visual and all the materials you have here, we're much looking forward to our presentation here this afternoon. Now I'll introduce, there, the clicker's working good, our panelists for this afternoon. First off, we have Phil Paxton. He's a grower and owner of Wheatland Trees in Canada, based out of Alberta. He's the past president of the Canadian Ornamental Horticulture Alliance and past president of the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association, which is a member of COA. He is also a member of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture's delegation here at COP28. Next to him is Alan White, the owner of Turf Systems Incorporated Canada, based out of Ontario. He's the vice president of the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association and is chair of their Climate Adaptation Committee. And our third panelist is Audrey Tim. She's here with the International Association of Horticultural Producers and is the Technical Initiative Manager for the United Kingdom. Now this panel here today is here on behalf of COA, and I think it's important to maybe understand what COA is. It's the Canadian Ornamental Horticultural Alliance, and they are a non-profit alliance of 3 national ornamental horticultural associations representing thousands of growers and owners across Canada. And what is ornamental horticulture? The Ornamental Horticulture Association sector in Canada grows plants such as potted and cut flowers, sod, shrubs, and trees. It also grows food stocks such as vegetable seeds, vegetable seedlings, and fruit trees. All in all, the sector grows thousands of different kinds of plants in all types of locations, soil, and weather conditions. Many of these plants are long-term. Many are still here 10 and even 100 years from now. I'm supposed to hit the slide here. Yeah. And what we're seeing here is an example of, it's a large Alberta nursery, and you can see the variety of plants and things that are available, you know, within just one of our producers here in Canada. So with that, we'll go to our panel now. And sorry, I've lost my place here. Okay, so first panelist question is to Audrey Tim. How would you describe, Audrey, the benefits of ornamental horticulture products and services?
Todd, thank you very much for the introduction to ornamental horticulture and for explaining quite what it is. It's quite important to know that. The ornamental horticulture industry reaches across a wide range of sectors and situations, and the benefits that I'm going to explain to you a little bit about have a very strong evidence base. We at AIPH in the ornamental horticulture industry believe that people have an innate connection to plants and nature, and it is our role to bring those into landscapes and introduce people to those immense benefits. There you go, back with us, Todd.
Saved him.
You better go back to your other seat.
Good, all settled. So one of the real benefits of plants and landscapes is biodiversity. The introduction of plants into landscapes, both rural and in the urban context, brings in a wide range of habitats for nature, and it enables also for nature and people to thrive together. Keeping into the urban context, plants in cities can reduce the urban heat island effect when they're used wisely. It can manage flooding, and it creates a really beautiful environment, and let's not lose sight of the fact that we respond very positively to beauty. If you've ever been to a park, you may have seen families congregating in the park, using the park for leisure, using it as a centre of a community, and that's one of the other powerful benefits that our ornamental horticulture industry brings to the urban landscape. You can see people surrounded and supported by greenery. And to do that, our horticulture industry works alongside other sectors, such as landscape architecture, planning, architects, ecologists, engineers. And through these links, we are able to deliver and elevate the many benefits of plants in our landscapes, Todd.
Thank you, Audrey. Yeah. There we are now. Yeah. So with that, Alan, what is meant by resilient urban and rural environments? And how can this be improved using both existing and needed infrastructure?
Thanks, Todd. Resilient in urban rural environments refers to the fact and the capacity of landscapes and those environments to withstand the shocks and pressures and the ability to recover from these various shocks, including climate change and even public health threats as it emerges, including things like air pollution, heat pressures that affect populations. Now, while our history hasn't always been kind to us, as it relates to climate readiness for these extremes, we have seen significant improvements. We're going backwards.
Yeah, running ahead of yourself. Oh, back even more.
One more.
Back.
I think the near fall just threw this off here.
Back one more. One more. There we go. There we go.
Example.
Going back to the 30s and 40s. When we saw the pressures of these extremes, but agriculture has advanced considerably in the innovation and technology and understanding these rural environments and how it benefits the agriculture community and the surrounding community to deal with these extremes and have the ability to recover from these has been lessons learned over the past couple decades. But as we move into our higher density environments, we're noticing these extremes having a greater and greater impact on those environments and the people that live there. So while we see many of these urban environments feeling unable to manage and to implement some of these adaptable traits from our rural counterparts, we also see the transfer of research and innovation in agriculture through cities and the best management practices, as well as plant-based solutions. Here you have a remediation bioswale in an urban ditch, which previously would have just been stormwater management. So significant changes here. While utilizing it and looking at some of the things to build resilient environments, there's a couple things to consider. One's utilizing plant solutions like buffer zones that are here, surface water management, nutrient management, bank stabilization on rivers and watersheds before it reaches our lakes. Innovative ideas like intentional urban cooling, airflow mapping, large-scale urban infrastructure design to help manage. Oh, my ear too. To help manage how the pollution and the urban heat island is impacting the surrounding area and the surrounding plants and populations. But a lot of green infrastructure improvements like green roofs, green walls, stormwater management, ponds, remediation corridors, permeable surfaces, natural ground covers, the introduction of bioswales as illustrated in the picture here, improvements to urban forests, greening of transportation corridors, and the return of even natural surfaces like sports fields and other spaces like open park spaces and even private spaces. By doing this, we filter more carbon from our environments, returning our water back to our groundwater, allowing plants to trans-evaporate and cool the surrounding environments at a far greater rate, while at the same time with access to the groundwater can sequester more carbon. Even the introduction of food crops to rural and urban helps build resilience within the population and a greater understanding of what's happening in the rural areas. But we need to do more. My ears are super sensitive to that noise. We need to do more. It's my voice, I guess. We need more to activate the potential that exists within these environments and with the people that live in these communities, which includes individuals. It includes politicians, it includes businesses, it includes innovators and policymakers. All to be part of building this capacity and the resilience within our cities. International collaboration as well, through events like this, transferring our knowledge, sharing it with others, between cities, natural areas, and globally learning from the success of our practices. And the experience in other regions contribute to building these resilient environments. I could probably go on and on, Todd, but we will cover many of this during the rest of our talks here and through the roundtable that we're going to do later. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Alan. And I think, at COP28 here, we really are talking to the world. And I think, Phil, when we think about what are the best management practices that we use at COA and how are they transferable to improve environmental sustainability and how are they transferable to other agricultural sectors and other countries as well?
That's a good question. And in thinking about this question, I keep going back to my own farm. And when you introduced me, in my volunteer work, I work for Canadian Ornamental Horticulture, but I have a farm where we produce the plants, and on top of producing the plants, we actually have some businesses that install and maintain those plants. We're in the final area in places that you talked about just a few minutes ago. So some of the things I wouldn't mind sharing with you is, and I think the picture on the wall and the picture on the back wall actually describes some of the farms that we have. My farm is about 50 miles east of Calgary in Western Canada. We have periods of intense heat, intense cold. We have at times too much water and other times not enough water. And climate change is interesting because if you're going to actually be a farmer and work with the changes, you have to be able to adapt. And at times when you have too much water, deal with it, and at times when you have too little water, deal with it. So some of the challenges we've had is to take advantage of these times of excess and hold water. And when we hold water, the danger is making sure it stays clean. So the use of things like aquatics, using plants to stabilize the sides of the water courses that at times can run too fast. Being able to slow water down by having different bays of water bay 1, slowing water down, allowing some of the sediments to drop out, having the right plant for those sediments, and then as the bays discharge into other bays, having different aquatics that will deal so that the water when it leaves your property is cleaner or as clean as when it came in. But then the key thing is that you use that water for your own crops. So that picture I'm trying to paint for you there is so transferable from my farm to best practices nearly everywhere. If you were to look at the urban environment and we looked at our planners and engineers, they're trying to recreate that exact same thing, where lots of rain will fall down in a short period of time, sometimes an inch of rain in half an hour, and lands on a grey or a non-permeable surface, and then we have flooding. And if we don't have ways of dealing with that water in a quick way, using some of the techniques that we use in the farms and using the plants, the very plants that can actually help ameliorate that problem. If we don't use some of those best practices, we will not stay sustainable in the urban and the peri-urban environment. And we'll have a roundtable a little bit later on and we'll talk about the importance of wetlands. But I only highlighted one issue there, which was handling water. And that's only one of the things that comes our way. I mean, if you think about it, I could probably do an equal diatribe, as it were, on the difference between heat and cold. Desperate cold in Canada an example of some of the issues we have when we have a lot of cold, a lot of snow, and then we get a high degree of sun at a very low angle. The reflection of that sun off the snow back onto the plants can do some major damage. And there are some innovative ways of dealing with that reflective surface. So that's just another example, switching quickly from water to snow. And it seems odd when you're outside in 25 degrees. But similarly in heat, many of our growers, by the way, use greenhouses, and I'm sure people in the audience use greenhouses, and we have to adapt to that greenhouse world. And adaptation in many ways is innovation. So for example, 12-volt power is a great way of opening up the shutters on a greenhouse to shed heat. If you're using 12-volt power rather than non-renewable energy power, in some cases internal combustions to do that, it can be difficult. And maybe I'll have a chance later on telling you what we do with our greenhouses to manage the intense heat in the summer. I think you gave me 5 minutes, Todd, and I probably overstood my time. I could go on for a while, so thank you for your indulgence.
Well, thank you very much. You haven't figured out how to keep some of that cold for the summer and some of the summer heat for the winter.
I can
more
talk
of that in Canada.
Yeah, I can talk about passive solar.
Absolutely.
If you'd like.
Yeah, we'll talk about that
a bit
maybe
later on. Sure.
Yeah. So now back to Alan. What are some of the plant-based solutions, and how can they help mitigate the effects of climate change and reduce things like greenhouse gas emissions and sequester carbon? We hear lots about carbon and sequestration of carbon, and what can ornamental horticulture do in that situation?
Yeah, thanks, Todd. I think I got the easy topic here with plant-based solutions and how it can help mitigate, because in reality, plants are at the core of life on Earth here. It's at the foundation where carbon, water, and soil all interchange and produce the very air we breathe, and then moderate the temperatures that we feel, like days like today. But it all is based in that critical role plants play in adapting to these environments themselves, and then what they contribute back, particularly as they're moved into high-intensity urban environments. But this comes from their ability to return carbon to the soils, which is where it came from. The plant's ability to move that through its systems, while at the same time producing the very clean air that we breathe. And taking the water, besides its critical support of agriculture and food, it's also critical for supporting urban and rural environments for the ability to cool. Plants assist in water management in two predominant ways. One is by managing the storm water that does come from extreme events, as we talked about earlier in being resilient. As we see these changes and the rain events become more significant, the ability to trap that water in the very ecosystem that it fell is critical to the support of the plant life that exists in that system. It also helps support the soil erosion and the risk mitigation from downstream events. But it's also important because returning water back to the groundwater and the ecosystem for which the plants will take it from, particularly as you get into longer-term plant species like trees and things that will be drawing from a far greater or deeper water source than traditional surface crops. But at the same time, a dry winter will have profound impacts in the summer, and vice versa. Extreme storm events not managed correctly will have dramatic effects on a field's ability or an environment's ability to move that water back into a storage capacity. But in both cases, the ability to have that water accessible is the very thing that we see that allows to cool the environments. And a cooler environment, not only does it feel better for us and help our population, it dramatically decreases the amount of carbon being introduced into our environment, again creating this compounding effect where we see increased heat, increased carbon release, lack of moisture falling, and just this cycle that's disrupted until such ways we can put greater number of plants into the systems that are being impacted the most. Ornamental plants also play a critical role in their intense root systems. These have the ability to, say, in a broader context, to stabilize soils. They also have the ability to build soils, and they have the ability to return carbons to the soils. Combine that with the long... It really doesn't. Later. All right. Combine this with the longevity of many ornamental horticulture crops like trees and shrubs. And even in many ways, when you look at the sod production, and sod may come to market quickly and see more of an instantaneous crop than what goes on in nursery production, the ornamental nature of it and the fact of its longevity and sustainability, survivability in diverse ecosystems, ability to tolerate drought, traffic, compacted soils, transported, harvested. It also has a longevity into an ecosystem once introduced, in grasslands like tree, urban forests have a significant contribution to our urban ecosystems and our rural ecosystems, even into the natural. So we're very knowledgeable about our urban forests and our natural forests, but if you look at in Canada anyway, a significant amount of our land is made up of grasslands, equally contributing carbon back into the soils. So all of these have the potential to address the long-term climate challenges through sequestering carbon capture, which we're hearing a lot more talked about here at the COP summits, Glasgow and COP26. It's exciting to hear it. We believe ornamental horticulture, all of agriculture, and the innovation and technology we learn because of the important role that plants play in this carbon capture and mitigating these environments will play a more significant role in human health, in food security, water security, disaster risk mitigation, whether it is in more natural habitats or as these all progress and many times migrate through high-intensity urban environments, but also ecosystem degradation and biodiversity loss. We can also provide long-term social economic benefits such as adaptation to climate, creating green jobs, community resilience and the health benefits I discussed, clean air and water, disaster risk management, ecosystem integrity, and again, biodiversity net gains. While some of these solutions may be directly transferable from what we've learned in our rural environments, higher density urban environments require a greater level of care, knowledge, but more importantly, design is usually required to be successful. These built ecosystems sometimes are in conflict with plant-based solutions because of their close proximity to things like concrete, asphalt, poor soils, and the extremes that a city presents. So with proper design, proper understanding and knowledge, we can have and move these transferable knowledges in. So I'm just going to pass the floor quickly over to Audrey, because Audrey's work, you see the slide behind us, is from the IUCN, and Audrey's had done considerable work with the ICUN and in particular to nature-based solutions. So I don't know if Audrey, you have anything you'd like to add to my comments.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. That was a really good introduction representation of plants and how they provide solutions. And just alluding to the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, they have developed a global standard for nature-based solutions. And the intention of that is really to put a framework around nature-based solutions so it's very clear what they can do and what they cannot do. And it's really important in planning, implementation, monitoring, and the longevity of some of their solutions is having a very strong clarity of what you're trying to achieve, who's involved from a stakeholder perspective, and what benefits you can realistically claim to achieve with nature-based solutions. And I think that's a very powerful way that IUCN is engaging with a range of industries, and the ornamental horticulture industry is very involved in working with IUCN to bring that standard and nature-based solutions into clarity and greater use.
Well, Audrey, and can you provide an example of how ornamental horticulture been utilized to remediate or improve degraded environments?
Todd, yes, the IUCN Nature-Based Solutions strongly looks at disaster risk management, ways in which land can become degraded. It can be from misuse, it can be from neglect, it can be as a result of natural disasters, and it can be a result of inappropriate development. And plants can contribute in many ways to both restore and remediate that degradation. Phytoremediation is one of the highly specialized ways that plants can contribute to restoration of degraded landscapes. And this is the use of plants that are specialized in filtering silt and soils, silt and solids from the environment. And actually, they have the capacity to uptake pollutants in a landscape. And in that way, plants are very powerful in creating a process by which lands can be returned to a natural and fruitful and useful state. Some of these principles are already also used in the urban context for water filtration, phytoremediation, and you alluded to this, Phil, in your best management practices. And this is where plants are used to trap and filter silt and to extract pollutants from water, both in rural and in urban landscapes. In sticking to the peri-urban space, so moving from rural into the cities, we look at the ability of plants to restore degraded waterways, and that's very much stabilizing banks, creating pockets where water flow is retarded and slowed down, and that allows the natural processes to have some space and some time to work in. And Alan, you alluded to very much about the use of plants in stabilizing in the urban context, so they can stabilize banks. If you're looking at using plants in the urban context to regenerate waterways, they bring in a huge range of aquatic life into urban areas. And this is very much about restoring nature. Where you bring a high diversity of plants, you will find a high biodiversity. This in rural can reduce and reverse loss of biodiversity. Very powerful way that the ornamental horticulture industry is involved there. Another consideration of both actions and interactions. This brings us to a spot where nature has powerful cycles, and for us, looking at bringing nature back into landscapes that are degraded is very much restoring and recognition, and this is where our industry both promotes and supports nature in degraded landscapes. Todd?
I think, it's a very good point when you think of the conversation around COP28 here and the accelerated climate change and how these products can start to help mitigate some of the emergencies that we seem to be creating more and more. So
that's actually a good point.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you said what ornamental horticulture can, and then said secondly what it cannot do. We have made some mistakes in the past when I think of some of the failed landscapes that have been put in, and one of the ones that springs to mind are things like green roofs. We've learned a lot from putting green roofs in the last 10 years and recognizing that there's some things that nature requires when you put a green roof in to ensure it survives. And that would be true as well when we're looking after our wetlands and the riparian zones between wetlands and agricultural land, making sure we look after those riparian zones properly. And in doing so, we do introduce the biodiversity you're talking about. And that biodiversity is so helpful in so many ways in rehabilitating nature that you see it. I mean, I just look at one wetland that we have done quite a bit of work on in the last 2 or 3 years on our farm, and we've reintroduced some species that were never there. And it's really wonderful to see. And how clearer the water is now. That's a big change. So,
Alan, what do you see the future for the ornamental horticulture industry, and how it can help to move things forward on, especially climate change and mitigation practices?
Well, I think the reason that we're to participate in carbon capture, even in indoor spaces, with the movement and what we've learned in greenhouses, I think is a real possibility to participate.
Audrey, in your opinion, how could ornamental products and services contribute to the UN's goal of climate change?
Todd, for us, it's obvious. We very much, we promote the power of plants, and we speak of what plants can do. And we can't look at it, though, in isolation. We have to look at how our sector interacts with other sectors. So, for example, if we're looking at green roofs, you spoke about, Phil, very much connecting with the smart industry, smart cities, and there are multiple ways that